Today we are discussing the extraordinary show The Pitt. The series is the definition of organized chaos, is not only engaging but offers a realistic look and take on the dire state of the US healthcare system. It wonderfully explores the line between the professional and the personal. How do doctors maintain their objectivity in such an intensely personal environment? You are introduced to a number of senior doctors, new doctors, soon-to-be doctors, all trying to prove themselves while also maintaining their sanity. On top of that, you have nurses with varying degrees of experience who have to manage all of that and more, including angry and fed-up patients. The show anchors itself with Dr. Robbie, played by Noah Weil. Because the show is set entirely at the ER, we don't actually find out that much about their personal lives. We only get glimpses into their personal struggles, but not a lot of details. Dr. Robbie anchors the series. He is the man that everyone looks up to. The show incorporates flashbacks of Dr. Robbie's time at the ER during COVID. And it's one particular case that just keeps coming up over and over again. And this case has been slowly eating away at him, and it eventually unravels him by the end of the series. The script is incredibly tight, and you have all these full circle moments that feel very earned and incredibly just well done. Each episode introduces us to new cases and also follows up and builds on previous cases. There are a number of storylines, however, the show manages to organize them all because they all feel very unique and each one is super memorable. The cases range from child abuse, human trafficking, to mass shootings. And I really do appreciate how certain cases slowly build up throughout the series. Very early on in the series, we are introduced to a mother who's very concerned about her son because he keeps posting these very concerning and violent remarks about women on social media. And the story comes full circle with a mass shooting at the end. And although we're not sure if this young man is responsible for the mass shooting that takes place at the end of the series, it definitely adds tension to an already explosive environment, especially to a character like Dr. Robbie, because everything that's going on inside of him, he's just a pressure cooker that eventually breaks down at the end of the series. He internalizes every case and takes every death so personally. And I think anchoring the show in Dr. Robbie allows us to really keep track of all the petty rivalries and disagreements that are going on with these doctors, because Dr. Robbie is very unique in that all his conflicts are internal. He's a man fighting with himself. He is the perfect anchor because he manages to somehow maintain this equilibrium in this workspace, evening the playing field for everyone. The hospital is very unique because it's also a teaching hospital, so senior doctors have the burden of not only doing their job, but trying to teach other doctors how to do theirs, which can be very difficult if you don't really have the personality or the temper for it. And even though there are so many characters on screen, each character is given enough screen time and enough of a storyline in order to develop their characters and also make them engaging. I also like how each case affects each doctor differently depending on their life experiences. And the show is very clever in how it develops each character through the different patients and families that come through this hospital. I feel like the revelations we get about each character, they never really feel forced. They give us enough information about each character, each doctor, each nurse in order for us to sympathize with them and also give them some depth. Besides Dr. Robbie, there are no main characters. Everyone just functions together to tell a great story, and each doctor is dealing with their own personal traumas, their own issues. And these are just as varied as the cases. I mean, some doctors are dealing with drug addiction, some doctors are dealing with miscarriages, family dramas. On top of that, each doctor has a lot on the line, whether it be debt repayment or parental approval. I think the way the show weaves in the personal, political, and professional, it feels so seamless. The economic and political tension in the country is definitely seeping into the healthcare system. The series is so smart to take place in an emergency room where doctors are forced to prioritize those in the most dire condition. Every patient who comes through to the ER, of course, feels like their case is the most important and will literally do and say anything in order to be heard, in order to be prioritized, in order to get attention. There's one patient in particular that I feel like is really well developed because you can feel his anger building with each episode to the point where he eventually punches a nurse in the face because he's so fed up and entitled. Incidences of violence and aggression towards healthcare workers have increased, and this puts pressure on a system that barely has enough people as it is. These doctors and nurses barely have time to go to the bathroom, and the one time they do take a break, they risk getting punched in the face. I think the show is very clever to illustrate how all this anger politically, economically that's going on in the country, people are taking their anger out on the wrong individuals. You have doctors begging for more resources, nurses begging for protection, and these hospital administrators just trying to run a business. And I felt like all this tension boiled up perfectly in episodes 12 and 13, which are some of the best episodes of TV I have seen all year. The series ends with a mass shooting, forcing all their anxieties, their frustrations, especially with Dr. Robbie, to come out. I think the parallels the show makes between COVID and the mass shooting could have been stronger, but you do get the message. Dr. Robbie is placed in a similar position where he's forced to prioritize certain lives over others. And this is where the line between the professional and the personal is the most tested. How much time is each life worth? Could you have done more? And the show is so great at showing you and never telling you. Because as you're watching the show, for example, you'll see Dr. Robbie really focused on one patient, but in the background, you'll see all these other doctors trying to save these other patients. And so you as a viewer are really concerned in terms of time management because you're like, well, if you spend too much time on this one person, maybe this other person will die. And I think it does in terms of environment, the show is really able to kind of put you in their shoes, and you really do feel the stress and you do feel the sense of urgency that these doctors have when they're forced to make life and death decisions. And the series is so clever never to fall into cliches, even at the end, because when this mass shooting happens, it happens at a music festival. And one of the possible victims could be Dr. Robbie's stepson. He ends up giving them the tickets, and this is something that's weighing on his mind. Fortunately for Dr. Robbie, his stepson is safe. However, his stepson's girlfriend ends up getting shot in the heart. This is when you really sympathize. And this is, I think, why the show is so fantastic, because you can feel him trying to be objective. On one hand, he has this responsibility to his son to do everything he can to save this young girl. However, he also has his responsibility to his coworkers and all these other patients around him. He has to kind of make a decision regarding her chances of survival, like how realistic is it? And this attempt to kind of juggle all these responsibilities, it fails to the point where he's just not able to see very clearly. And I think from the outside looking in, it's very easy for people unfamiliar with this line of work to be like, well, you could have done more, you could have done this, you could have done that. But when you're kind of there in the moment, watching them do it, the last scene in the series totally broke me because he has to break it to his son that his girlfriend is dead. He then has to give him that opportunity to say his final goodbye. And the way Dr. Robbie has been unraveling this entire season has been done with such care. He will never forget the number of patients who have died on his watch. Like, these are people that haunt him. These are people that he still thinks about in terms of what could he have done differently. Maybe if the hospital wasn't under so much pressure, he could have done this, that, or the other. And the way he's talking about it, realize it's not just about one case. What is the line between human error, institutionalized failure, and just due diligence? Like, you really did everything you could do, but some things are just out of your control. And I just think the series is spectacular. I thought the last shot was unbelievably emotional and well done. And again, the tension the series creates by putting you on the floor. And the way I think the show gets you invested, not just in each character, but in each case, I think is extraordinary, because the one constant throughout each episode is how is how you feel for each patient, because we've all been on the other side of that frustration, that anger, where we're just waiting and we just kind of want to get out of there, but we also want to be okay. The only person we can think about is ourselves. And the show puts you in so many different shoes. And I think as a viewer, this is really effective because you're never rooting against any character. You're not rooting against any patient. You're just watching. The show just forces you to observe, listen without judgment, essentially. And I just think it's just so well done. And if you haven't seen it, please go watch it. But you guys let me know what you think, and until next time.